Listen to the radio. Harry and Edna's want to show you heard it from the Three Bells.
Watto and welcome to Harry and Edna on the Wireless. And today, well, I think we can be a little bit controversial. We've been to many an event and they featured things which they term as vintage, and they're maybe from the 80s and the 70s or the 1990s. Never too sure if that really is vintage or is it retro or whatever you like to call it. But today, I guess we're going to be delving into these this very topic because we've got a corker of an interview today. We're going to the Cold War. We're flying high through space and I just don't know how else to explain it, really. What we're doing. We've got a wonderful chap, a retired colonel from the United States Air Force, and he'll be telling young Edna what it was like to fly a Blackbird. He was also an F4 pilot in the 1960s and the 1970s. So it's a little bit modern for us, but the subject, well, I love aviation anyway, and these are really quite classic airplanes, particularly the Blackbird. I mean, it is so, I don't know, unique. It's almost like it's a very dominating airplane when you see one of these up close. And of course you can see one up close because you can see one in the United Kingdom at the American Air Force Museum, which is at IWM Doxford in Cambridge. And this is where we caught up with our good chum who's telling us about what it was like to fly one of these machines. And as a result, we thought we'd also play a couple of snippets of interviews with a lady called Esther Blaine, who is the marketing manager at IWM Doxford, and she'll tell us all about the American Air Museum, because we thought, you know what, you chaps should really hear about this.
What ho!
So very fortunate to be able to meet Col Richard Graham, a pilot of an SR-71 Blackbird. Could you describe for our listeners what is an SR-71 Blackbird?
It's a plane that was developed by Kelly Johnson at the Skunk Works in California to overfly Russia and overfly China. So back in the 1960s, they had this terrible fear of the Russia and China. We didn't know much about their nuclear capability, their ICBM capability, and they asked Kelly Johnson to build an airplane that could overfly Russia or China. That didn't. We built the airplane, the SR-71, to do that, but the powers to be, the President of the United States never authorized an overflight of superpowers of China or Russia. So no Blackbird of any variety has been over the landmass of Russia or China. And we cover the periphery and out in international waters, and we got good cameras that can look, 30, 40, we got some that go 100 miles inland to see their facilities, but we've never been over the landmass. Once Gary Powers got shut down in 1960, that was the end of overflights.
Right.
The SR-71 is very futuristic looking. It's black. It has a sinister look to it because it's black. It looks like it is built to go 3 times the speed of sound, and that's where we cruised all the time at about 2,000, 2,100 miles per hour. So.
And what's it like? What's the feeling of going that fast? I mean, it's only something we can imagine and you've experienced.
You don't really get a sensation of speed over the ground because you're flying at 75, 80,000 feet where you can see tremendous distances. Curvature of the Earth is very prominent. So because of the distances, you don't have this tremendous sensation of speed. But when you look at your miles clicking off at 35 miles every minute at 2,000 miles an hour, you then have a mental idea of how fast you're going. You actually had a better appreciation for time and distance relationships. We take off out of California, we land at Mildenhall 4.5 hours later, So that's how you get the speed and thinking about time and distance.
Is it a case of mentally not... I appreciate you have to obviously think and be aware of what you're doing, but if you think about it too much, does that make you more aware of what you're doing? Do you have to somehow detach yourself from how fast you're going and what it is that you're doing?
The training is so extensive in this airplane that you don't really get a real feeling like that, a detachment. I mean, it's all planned out. Once you get above 60,000 feet, all the airspace on the globe is yours because there's no airline, nothing. There's no air traffic control system above 60,000 feet. So anywhere in the globe, that is your airspace. So you're not hemmed in by restrictions other than foreign countries and borders and where the cameras have to be and you have to be very specific. But it's a sort of a wide opening kind of feeling once you get above 60,000 feet, knowing that this is all your airspace. So.
What ho!
Did you ever envisage that you would fly an aircraft like this? Or when you got into flying, was technology like this even on the horizon?
When I was in college, President Johnson in 1964, I was just getting ready to graduate, he made the first public announcement the existence of a Mach 3 airplane. And I looked at that, and I was already going to the Air Force and into pilot training. And I just mentally, I thought, oh, that thing is so far out, I'd never even get into it. Because, I was just a fledgling. I hadn't even started my flying career in the Air Force. And then I got in the Air Force, and I started flying F-4s and Phantoms, and I saw the possibility on the horizon. And I finally applied for the program in 1973 and got accepted in 73 into the airplane.
Is it a long training process once you get accepted?
The training takes place at Beale Air Force Base in Northern California. It's 9 months long, very, very extensive, very demanding. But first thing you have to do is pass 12 simulator missions, numbers 1 through 12. And for each simulator mission was basically a check ride. So you get 2 practice rides for mission number 1, 2 practice rides, and you take a check ride. You pass that, then you go on to mission number 2. You get 2 check rides for number 2. And then you get the real check ride, and you pass that or fail. Anywhere you fail along the point, you're gone. I mean, that's history. You don't get any more backup flights. So you get through all 12 simulator missions. You now get to put your first footstep in the trainer airplane, and you only get 5 flights in the trainer. If you can't hack it and can't do like air refueling, let's say, or you can't do this in 5 flights, you're basically history again. So it's very demanding.
So were you ever conscious that this was your one and only opportunity at every stage of the way?
Every stage you knew that this was a check ride. Everything you do, they were being watched and monitored. And even if you weren't being watched and monitored, the airplane picks up electronically probably about 250 to 300 parameters and records them every 3 seconds. And if you could fly the airplane halfway around the globe and think no one's watching you, but when they download the tapes, the other pilots that are the senior pilots, they will look at how well you flew it, how well your bank angles were, where were you at, were you on your speed, were you on your altitude, where you're supposed to be. So you get your check rides just by getting a printout of how you flew.
And was the idea behind that because they wanted you to be as near perfect as possible, or was it testing your ability and your the way you mentally coped with flying?
Well, it wasn't so much your ability. It's just because the cameras, I mean, you had to have a nice stable platform. You had to be at this place, or else if you weren't where you were supposed to be at the right time, you're not going to get your target areas for the cameras and the sensors to be working. So it was very critical that the airplane be in the right place at the right time, all the time.
And as you sort of graduated up through the aircraft as well, what was it like to graduate up through aircraft technologically? Were they very different from each other? Was it... I'm just relating it back to once speaking to a Battle of Britain pilot who then flew a Meteor, I think it was, and he said it's like getting from an old car into a sports car. Suddenly you know the difference between the aircraft.
Yeah, no, that's true. When I was flying F-4s, it's a good airplane for its job and role. When you get into this now, this is a different airplane. You have to baby this. You cannot fly it like a fighter. You can't pull the G's with this airplane. It's very G restrictive. You'll bend the metal on this thing because the whole airplane is going to heat up at 80,000 feet, where the outside air temperature is at a minus 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Minus 70 degrees. This whole airplane heats up to around 400 degrees. So skin friction alone and that kind of a cold atmosphere will get it very hot. It has to be handled very, very gingerly.
What ho!
What was it like? Can you sort of describe the feeling of takeoff, for example, and climbing to those altitudes? What did it feel like? Or were you just simply concentrating on the job in hand?
Pretty much concentrating on the job at hand. You get the gee whiz factor early on during your training missions. And then once you start flying it operationally, then you get the gee whiz of I'm I'm now taking pictures of Murmansk. I'm taking pictures of Vladivostok. So there's other gee whiz factors that you sort of, once you get all done with your training, the airplane's not so much gee whiz. Now its capabilities become gee whiz to you.
Were you ever worried about your missions, or were you kind of worried about the importance that was put upon you to achieve what you needed to achieve?
No one had I don't think any crew member really had this big, heavy, weighty feeling that, you could always do it again tomorrow. If the airplane, if you got a problem with it, you come home. You have, you don't want to be out in some bad guy territory and have a problem with it. So we had very definitive rules of when you abort and come home or carry on kind of a thing. Yeah.
How long did you fly this aircraft for?
I flew it for 7 years. Very, very lucky. I say the average crew member stayed in the program maybe 3.5 to 4 years. I was very lucky to stay in for 7 years, and then they offered me the squadron commander's job. And the squadron commander of this outfit doesn't fly the airplane anymore. So I had to make a decision. Do I want to take the squadron commander's job? And I knew my time in the airplane after 7 years is coming to an end anyhow, so I took the squadron commander's job.
Do you still fly today?
I teach students up at outside. I live in Dallas, Texas, and just a little airport to the north of me called McKinney Airport. There's 2 flying clubs, and I instruct for both flying clubs. Yeah.
So do you still get the same thrill with flying that you've had over the years?
Well, let's put it this way. When you're flying with students, there's always a thrill involved. The students could do anything and everything. So, yeah, you're on your edge just with them like you are with this airplane.
Do you ever miss the days of flying the faster aircraft, or is it something that you've sort of been there, done that, and now want to do something different?
It's probably exactly as you say. I've been there, done that, and I'm glad I got the chance to do it. I feel very honored to be able to do it, and now I just have good, fond memories. Yeah.
So you're here at Duxford today promoting your book?
They asked me to come down and do a book signing. I think we're going to do another one tomorrow here at Duxford. And I do book signings all around the United States. In fact, while I'm in England, I got 10 speaking engagements all over the country here. Yeah. All the books are probably available online. If they want autographed copies, they need to, contact me directly. But you can get them, I'm sure, between eBay and Amazon and all that. They're all available somewhere out there. Yeah, I've written 5 books on the airplane.
And just very broadly, the difference between the different books?
Each one's a little bit different. Yeah, my first book, obviously, when any author sits down to write their first book, you never think about more. That's not part of your scheme. You're just writing a book. Little did I know I was going to write 4 more. So the first one, all-inclusive, very general about the airplane. Then I moved on to a book called Stories, Tales, and Legends. It tells a bunch of stories from 17 different pilots, unique things that happened to them, guys that ejected out of the airplane. Then I found there's an audience that wants to learn every little nut and bolt. So that's where I wrote the other one, Flying the SR-70. It gets into every nut and bolt of the airplane. And then the last 2 books I wrote are sort of what they call coffee table books. Well, they're high quality, big pictures, and sort of tell the story through pictures more than words.
And just very quickly stepping back, did you as a pilot have to know about every single nut and bolt to do with your aircraft?
Not particularly every nut and bolt, but you had to know all the systems on the airplane because, everything from the fuel, the hydraulic, the engines, all your systems all sort of interplay and they all react to hot temperatures. That temperature of 400 degrees and heating this airplane up all the time. You have to know your systems pretty good.
As we're stood here underneath the aircraft, do you still get a kind of warmth or a wow factor still that you stand here and think, do you know I flew that?
Probably the biggest factor when I come over to Duxford and I see the airplane here, my mind starts dropping back to when I flew this airplane and the flying of it rather than the wow factor. I think more about the good times and just flying it and some of the places we went that no other person's been.
What ho!
This is Harry Edna on the wireless, giving you a sneaky peek into the great British vintage scene. Now, a fresh show is uploaded to the internet for you to listen again and again every week. Plus, the show is also broadcasted on various radio stations. So to hear a previous broadcast or to find out where we are broadcasting on the radio, simply go to harryandedna.co.uk and click on the tab that says wireless.
Listen to the radio. Harry and Edna's Wireless Show. You heard it from the 3